Okay, let's jump right in. When the United States formally entered World War II, the nation didn't just face a massive conflict overseas. There was this immediate, almost paralyzing crisis right here on the home front.
Right. Suddenly, millions of men who were, the vast majority of the industrial workforce, they just left their factory jobs to join the military.
And the result was a crippling labor shortage. It threatened the entire industrial backbone of the country.
The very places that were supposed to be building the weapons and supplies needed to win the war.
Exactly. So today we're going to unpack how the government solved this massive crisis by doing something completely unprecedented, recruiting women into heavy industry.
And we can trace that whole movement through one iconic figure, Rosie the Riveter.
What's so wild is just how fragile the war effort was in those first few months.
It really was. The mobilization required just an unbelievable output of ships, planes, tanks. And without constant production, the entire military campaign could have failed.
So those empty spots on the assembly lines, they weren't just an inconvenience.
No, they were a massive, immediate national security threat.
And this need, this undeniable need, it forced a complete flip in thinking among leaders.
A total ideological shift. For the first time in American history, they were actively, aggressively campaigning for women to take jobs they had always been told not to do.
Hard, physical, high-skill, industrial labor.
Right, because they'd simply run out of other options.
So the government had to pivot its messaging, like, overnight. They had to convince an entire generation of women, and really the public, that this was okay.
That it was essential. Public officials started emphasizing that every single available person was needed.
Yeah.
Working in a factory was immediately framed as the ultimate patriotic duty.
The only way to make sure their husbands, brothers, and sons had what they needed to survive.
That brings us right to the genius of their PR campaign.
To draw women into defense work, they created one of the most powerful propaganda tools in American history, Rosie the Riveter.
She was the perfect symbol.
Strong, competent, and totally dedicated.
And she had to be sort of engineered to work for the public. She needed to look tough enough for the job, but also relatable.
And the most famous image, of course, is that "We Can Do It" poster by J. Howard Miller.
If you look closely at it, you'll see she's in a practical blue jumpsuit, but with a bold red polka dot bandana.
She's flexing a muscle, showing strength, but her face isn't hard, it's just determined.
Exactly. And that message was key to overcoming those social barriers. It told people that factory work was patriotic, and crucially, that it did not diminish a woman's femininity.
She wasn't a real person, not a celebrity. She was an idea.
An archetype.
And she just exploded. She became a national phenomenon, movies, hit songs on the radio, newspapers.
It really gave a heroic face to the millions of women suddenly taking on these jobs.
So to manage all of this massive cultural change, the government launched a huge media campaign.
It was all coordinated by the Office of War Information, the OWI.
Which was basically the government's giant wartime ad agency.
Totally. They flooded every medium available, posters, radio, even short films in movie theaters, all designed to change public opinion.
And they were brilliant at making the complex seem manageable.
How so?
Well, they realized women might be intimidated by huge, loud factory equipment, so they used these incredibly relatable analogies.
Oh, right, comparing factory tasks to household chores.
Exactly. The message was, if you can use an electric mixer, you can absolutely learn to run a drill press.
Or if you can manage a sewing machine, you can run a lathe.
They framed industrial work in the language of domestic life, which made it seem much less scary.
And that campaign's whole goal was to just override the social stigma. It wasn't just about money anymore. By wrapping manual labor in the flag, they hammered home this patriotic message.
That by working in a factory, you were helping bring your husband or son home sooner.
It gave the work a kind of moral weight it never had before.
So what did these jobs actually look like? This wasn't just packing boxes.
No, not at all. Women were taking on incredibly challenging roles. We're talking about becoming certified riveters, skilled welders, electricians.
Crane operators even, working way up high in the shipyards.
They were building the war machine, assembling complex aircraft engines, building the hulls of massive tanks. This was not unskilled labor.
No, it required serious measurable skill.
These women had to learn to read complex blueprints. And crucially, they had to master precision measuring tools.
You're talking about things like micrometers and calipers.
Right. And for anyone listening, those are tools that measure dimensions down to 1,000th of an inch. Incredibly precise.
And before the war, that kind of precision work was considered, well, exclusively male territory.
The fact that thousands of women mastered these tools proved an adaptability that I think really shocked a lot of skeptical supervisors.
So what were the numbers? What was the result of all this?
The results were just undeniable. In the aircraft industry alone, women eventually made up nearly 40% of the entire workforce.
40%. So this wasn't a token effort. This was the foundation of the production system.
Absolutely. And their success proved that gender was simply not a barrier to performing high-quality technical work.
But getting them all trained must have been a huge challenge.
A massive logistical challenge. Most had no prior experience, so companies and schools set up these intensive vocational classes. They were short, often just a few weeks, and they were laser-focused on basic skills, power tool safety, and meeting military quality standards.
It was like a factory boot camp.
That's a perfect way to put it. But solving the training problem created a whole new set of problems at home.
You mean the double burden?
Exactly. Women were working these demanding factory jobs, long shifts, nights, overtime, but the expectation was still that they'd handle all the home responsibilities. Cooking, cleaning, childcare. It was like having two full-time jobs.
I just can't imagine the pressure. Was there any support for them?
The government was slow, but yes, some support did emerge out of necessity. This period saw the creation of some of the first federally funded childcare centers.
Because if women couldn't get childcare, they couldn't work.
Right, and some companies even started offering on-site services, like laundry or pre-cooked meals women could grab on the way home.
But even with that, they were still fighting battles inside the factories. The discrimination was huge.
Financially, it was brutal.
Women were routinely paid significantly less than men for doing the exact same work.
It shows that while the country needed their labor, the system wasn't ready to grant them equality.
And you had male supervisors who were often openly skeptical, treating them with disrespect.
And we have to add another layer here. The hardship for African-American women was even greater.
They faced racial discrimination just trying to get hired, and then gender discrimination once they were on the floor.
Often pushed into the most difficult, dirtiest, and lowest-paying jobs, no matter their qualifications.
But despite being doubly stacked against them, they showed incredible resilience.
Their work was key to integrating some of those defense plans and proving their value to the war effort.
And this whole workforce, despite all these challenges, they delivered. The output is why the U.S. became known as the arsenal of democracy.
We were talking thousands of B-17 and B-24 bombers.
The backbone of the air war, and the Liberty ships that ferried supplies across the oceans.
All built primarily by female workers.
Yeah.
Their speed and precision met production schedules that many thought were impossible.
And their entry into this world also changed fashion, right? But
Yeah.
for safety reasons.
Yeah, think about it. Loose hair and loose clothing are incredibly dangerous around moving machinery.
So that forced women to adopt practical clothes like trousers and overalls.
And that's where Rosie's iconic look comes from. That red polka dot bandana wasn't just a style choice.
It was a mandatory safety requirement to keep hair from getting caught in the machines.
Right. Heavy gloves and steel-toed boots became standard gear. A whole new style of workwear born out of necessity.
But this incredible moment in history, it didn't last.
Not at all. When the war ended in 1945, the change was abrupt. It was almost traumatic.
As soldiers returned home, the expectation was that women would just give up their jobs.
They were routinely fired or pressured and shamed into resigning so that veterans could reclaim their old positions.
The psychological whiplash must have been jarring.
Oh, completely. The same propaganda machine that told them their highest duty was to weld and rivet.
Suddenly pivoted again and told them their new duty was to go back to the kitchen.
Many women felt a real sense of disappointment, even betrayal. They'd experienced financial independence, learned skilled trades, and felt a profound sense of purpose.
And going back to a purely domestic role felt like a step backward.
But even with that rollback, the long-term impact of the Rosies was permanent. The war proved, on a national scale, that women could perform any job, often with greater efficiency than the men before them.
It completely shattered that pre-war idea that women were somehow physically or mentally incapable of handling technical labor.
Absolutely. And that memory of mass female employment laid the groundwork for the later women's rights movements of the 60s and 70s.
It fundamentally altered how generations of girls started to think about their own career potential.
Which is why Rosie remains such a powerful modern symbol of strength, capability, and the ongoing fight for gender equality and fair pay.
The story of Rosie the Riveter is just a powerful reminder that crisis often forces innovation by stripping away our old assumptions. It proves that talent is never restricted by gender.
And that raises an interesting question for you to consider. If it took a global war to prove women could perform highly skilled industrial labor, what deep-seated assumptions are we still holding today that might be shattered if a new national crisis forced us to rethink who belongs where?
Good luck with your studies.